Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on benefits and entitlements with Dami Owabamarin from the Disability Law Service. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's really great to see so many of you already coming in. The Disability Law Service is a unique charity that's been providing free legal advice and representation for disabled people since 1975. In fighting injustice for disabled people, they work to challenge the poverty and inequality faced by those with disabilities by securing for them access to justice and to their legal rights. I highly recommend checking out their website, which hopefully Dami will direct you to later. But yeah, just say a little bit about Dami. Dami is a specialist welfare rights advisor at the DLS and currently training to obtain their OISC qualification, which allows one to legally provide immigration advice. Dami's main role is to provide legal advice and to ensure the legal requirements expected from those with disabilities or ill conditions have reasonable adjustments made for them. Dami wants everyone to be seen and believes disabled people or less fortunate people are not seen or heard enough. So the webinar today will consist of a presentation by Dami and then the opportunity to ask some questions, which is really exciting. I do ask that these questions are not too specific because everyone's situation is unique, and obviously Scleroderma Raynaud's being complex and unique to the person means that everyone's experiences are really different. So I want the information that comes out of today's webinar to be applicable to as many people as possible. It will also be recorded and put on YouTube, so I wouldn't want your personal details to be broadcasted online. So anyway, I'm going to hand over to Dami so we can hear all about how the SRUK community can navigate the benefits web. All right, over to you, Dami.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out today to join us. Looking forward to answering some of your questions and putting me on the hot spot. So today we're going to touch on sort of the basic UK benefit entitlements across the board. And these will generally be benefits that are catered or eligible for those with ill conditions, mental health conditions, disabilities, and obviously, as you would understand, skin conditions and things like that would also fall under that remit. But we'll be covering it as a general basis rather than specifically the condition, okay? So I'm going to start off and get straight into the presentation because I'm sure some of you are eager to sort of shoot me your questions. So we're going to avoid the first few slides because I feel like that introduction about me was absolutely spot on. So I'm not going to waste any more time with that. So we can go to slide 4, available UK welfare benefits. That would be great.
Is that showing?
Don't think so.
No.
There we go.
Okay, great.
So the available UK welfare benefits are, so I think we're going to need the next slide up, please. Here we go. So the current benefits available in the UK are as follows. So we have means-tested income-based related benefits. Some of you may or may not know, but means-tested basically just means that your assets and your savings will be taken into consideration when applying for this benefit. Anything between £6,000 to £16,000, you know, will either reduce or stop any means-tested benefits. Then you've got your contribution-based national insurance, which covers ESA, and that's now branded under the New Style ESA. And you've also got New Style Job Seekers Allowance. New Style was just a fancy word of saying upgraded. So please don't let that throw you off. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a completely different benefit to the original. It's a replacement of, so you can only apply for it. You can't apply for like New Style ESA and, you know, ESA. You've also got your means-tested benefits, which is your statutory sick pay, personal independence payment, your child disability living allowance, attendance allowance, and carers allowance. So all of these benefits that I've just mentioned do not take any assets or savings into consideration. So regardless of what you have or what you own, that will not prevent you applying for those benefits in the means tested section. If we can move on to the next couple of slides. So I'm just going to touch on briefly on what and where to apply for some of these benefits. So universal credit, I'm sure all of you might have, some of you might have heard of it, some of you might not have, and the stigma around universal credit. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's great. It's a work in progress system. I'm going to be honest. But it's an income-related welfare benefit system, generally open to claimants from working to state pension age. And of course, there's some exceptions made. Universal credit is designed to help claimants supplement their income, help with rent, and things like child costs. Now, universal credit has replaced old legacy benefits that some of you might still be claiming. That's not a problem at all. But if there is a change of circumstances in the near future, you will automatically be migrated onto universal credit. And at one point, the government is planning, I think by 2025, 2026, regardless of change of circumstances or not, everybody's going to eventually be moved on to universal credit if you're eligible for it. And that currently replaces things like income support, housing benefit, and the working tax system as well. How to apply for universal credit. So the only way you can apply for universal credit at the moment is online. Long term, we are trying to make that more adjustable for disabled clients or just clients that just struggle with access to the internet or have issues with being in front of a PC and the light and things like that. But for now, the only way to apply for universal credit is online. But there are many, many agencies that offer that online help in completing forms for you. So that's always an option as well. Okay, so what is New Style Job Seekers Allowance? New Style JSA is like universal credit in that the claimant must sign a seeking agreement in order to be paid this benefit. Unlike universal credit, New Style JSA, Job Seekers Allowance, is not income-based, but on a client's national insurance contributions. Therefore, a claimant for a partner, savings, earnings, or capital will not be considered for eligibility. Claimants for New Style JSA can receive universal credit at the same time, but any payment will be deducted from their universal credit maximum monthly amount, pound for pound. So you can get two benefits, but if you do get two benefits, always understand that the New Style Job Seekers Allowance will reduce the take home that you receive from a universal credit claim. How to make an application for New Style JSA. Again, that's online. You can actually print forms if I'm correct. So you don't actually need to fill it out online if you don't want to. You can do a hard copy. And nowadays, I'm hearing that you can actually just go into the job centre and get that assistance there and then, okay? New Style Employment and Support Allowance. New Style ESA, so that's Employment and Support Allowance, is a claimant for it's those that are unable to work due to sicknesses, ill health, diseases, disablement, or impairment. Unlike universal credit, New Style ESA is not income-based, but on a claimant's national insurance. Therefore, a claimant or partner's savings, earnings, or capital will not be considered for eligibility. So when I talk about national insurance contributions, it basically means whether you have earned enough contributions to be able to apply for the New Style JSA or the New Style ESA. It's kind of complex, and that's why it depends on an individual case. But in short form, if you have earned too much national insurance, that could affect your eligibility to claim either new style JSA or new style ESA. If you have made too less of a contribution for national insurance, that could also cause problems unless you can prove why, for example, why those national contributions are not adding up, or why some years are less than the other. But again, like I said, it really does depend on an individual case. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So again, to apply for the new style ESA, if you go into the gov.uk website, you can apply online, or you can get a hard copy. You will not be eligible for new style ESA if you are already eligible for statutory sick pay. So as soon as your statutory sick pay ends, then you can then progress onto applying for new style ESA. If you are currently getting statutory sick pay, you cannot claim new style ESA. Okay. Further information on new style JSA can be found by following the link above. But I'm happy to answer any questions. So please have them ready. What is statutory sick pay? I know some people just generally think it's, just getting paid for being off work or for a short period of time, but generally it does confuse people, especially when people don't understand if it's automatic or what it means to get statutory sick pay. So I'm just going to cover it briefly. If you are ill and you have been off work for at least 4 days, you can get statutory sick pay from your employer for up to 28 weeks. Statutory sick pay is currently paid at the rate of £96.35 per week. If after your 25th week on statutory sick pay, you are still too ill to return to work, you can then begin a claim for a new style ESA, okay? And again, like I said previously, that also depends on if you have enough NI contributions. To claim for statutory sick pay, you will need to supply your employer with a GP like sick note or an NHS COVID isolation note signing you off from work. To obtain an isolation note, there's a link. But again, I think we can share that around if it's needed. If not, that's fine. If you are not eligible for statutory sick pay, you can make a claim for new style ESA. So if you're just not eligible for for statutory sick pay because you haven't been at your workplace for long enough to be able to claim it, you can automatically just apply for the new style ESA. Okay. What is personal independence payment, child disability, living allowance, and attendance allowance? So all three of these benefits I call disability benefits because I believe those benefits are to cater to the less sort of able clients and people. So PIP, Child DLA, and AA are all disability benefits designed to help children, working age adults, and the elderly to get the financial and independence that they need with their day-to-day struggles. These benefits are non-means tested. As I explained, it means that they do not consider your savings, earnings, or capital when applying for the above. Okay. How to apply for PIP, DLA, and AA. To make a new claim for PIP, you can call the claims line. We can share the number if some of you want that. And you can once you get through to them, they can send you a claim form, and you will have 30 days in which to fill it out and send off any medical evidence that you would like to use to support your claim. Child DLA. You can do a child DLA online, or you can call them. I would recommend always calling them, just because when you do make that phone call, that's the date that your claim will start. So no matter how long they take to assess your claim, if they are awarding you PIP, DLA, or AA, they will backdate the payment from the day you called. That will be the date that you started your claim. Okay, so that's much better than when you're filling it out on paper. Hard copy, it will start on the day they receive it. And with, you know, strikes going on and things like that, I think that might cause some of our clients and things losing out. Yeah. The same with AA, you could fill it out online, but like I said, it's better to call them just so that you get that extra sort of financial backup. What is carer's allowance? So carer's allowance is a benefit if you are regularly and substantially caring for someone for 35 hours a week, then you would be eligible for carer's allowance for doing so. If the person you are caring for is receiving one of the benefits mentioned in my last slide, which is PIP daily living component, child DLA middle or high rate care component, or any rate of A&A, then they will be seen as qualifying disabled person. So in fact, having those people that you're looking after on those benefits sort of automatically allows you to be eligible for that benefit, which is always a plus. Okay. You can make a claim for carer's allowance online. You must be at least the age of 16, not in full-time education, or earning more than £128 per week after expenses. How to apply for a benefits decision. So I've kept it simple because in most cases, when it comes to appealing for any benefit decisions, it's always better to get legal advice. But I think it's also very, very important for you to know that you have options when the DWP turns around and says that, you know, you're not eligible, or they decide not to award you with a specific benefit. It doesn't end there. It can carry on. And I think it's important to know what your options are. Okay. So the appeals process for the DWP welfare benefits has 3 stages. So you have the mandatory reconsideration, which is the MR, and that's done at the first stage. So what that basically means is that you're asking the DWP to look back at their decision and to, you know, to sort of consider facts that you might have mentioned in your MR for them to relook at your claim. If they turn around and come back and say, oh, actually, we have looked at it again, we've decided that we're going to not award you still, you can then take it to the first tier tribunal. Now, with the first tier tribunal, I always say that you've got a fresh pair of eyes sort of looking at your claim, and you can also submit further evidence that you believe will strengthen your case, and that's another process. If it gets to that stage and the DWP still turns around and says, we're not awarding you with the benefit that you are trying to claim, then the final stage will be the upper tier tribunal. Now, with the upper tier tribunal, it is slightly different in a sense that you are no longer arguing why the DWP should have awarded you that benefit. Your argument will solely now be based on an error in the law, which, you know, in short terms is you're finding specific things that they have done wrong legally in order for them to not have assessed your claim fairly. So if you believe, for example, that some of your evidence has not been taken into consideration, that would be grounds to go to the upper tribunal. If you felt like there was a discrimination matter, for example, or certain things mentioned were not taken into consideration, again, that will be grounds for the upper tier. But I won't touch too much on it, but that's just to give you an idea of the stages that you do have as an option to see your claim through. So you are eligible, so you can be awarded the things that you are, you know, entitled to. At each stage of each tribunal service, there is a general time limit of 1 calendar month, which is 30 days. Although there is a provision to have a late appeal up to 13 months. That happens with mandatory reconsideration and the first tier, but that does not include the upper tier. It is 30 days, and a day late, they just won't accept it. They're really strict at that level of appeal. To request the mandatory reconsideration, you can fill out a CRMR1 form, which is available on the gov.uk website. I always say, just don't fill out that form. Please write a written statement. I am a firm believer of written statements because those are your arguments. I just don't believe that the CRM1 form is long enough for someone to explain the real reasons to why they should be awarded a claim. You have a section on there and it's about a few lines long. So I always say, fill out the basics on that form, use that as a cover letter. And with your written statement, you're going into details into why you believe you should have been awarded certain components, certain descriptors. And, I feel like that is your page to express, okay? First tier, again, you can lodge it. I would always say if you're lodging an appeal at the first tier tribunal, do it online because you can always follow the progress. You have an account and you can literally monitor it that way. If you do it with paper-based, you're finding that you're going to have to call the tribunal and they might not be as responsive as we would like them to be. Yeah. The upper tier, yeah, I mean, like I said, it is complex. And I'm not gonna, to be honest, go into it. But like I have said there, please do feel free to call or email the Disability Law Service for further information or guidance to do so, especially if you are facing an appeal to the upper tier tribunal. We will advise on it, but just to reiterate that we don't offer representation at the Disability Law Service Welfare Rights Team. We only offer advice and guidance at any appeal stages. Okay, so I think I'm going to answer some questions before sort of finishing off with cost of living payments that the government has agreed on paying for this next financial year. Is that okay?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I was wondering if maybe, if it's okay with you, we could send your slideshow around to everyone afterwards because it's got some really useful links in there. Yeah? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, I wanted to know, actually, I mean, I know it only just came out, but this is just from what I've heard from inquiries coming in to us. If you had any information for us just quickly about the spring budget and how that would affect PIP claims, because I know that the new sanctions on work, they're coming in, and I was wondering if you had any ideas as to how that might affect pre-existing PIP claimants or people that are thinking about applying.
Yeah, so it doesn't, so the new financial budget that came out hasn't necessarily affected PIP as a whole. What it has done, though, it has affected those that could potentially apply for personal independence payment. So what I mean is, for example, with universal credit, at the moment, they have the sort of work capability assessment, and then you can put into two groups, a support group and sort of a limited working capability group, right? And at the moment, that's a different assessment to what PIP do. But what the new spring budget has hinted is that they're going to scrap the work capability assessment. And I think they've said it's going to be called the DWP health assessment or something like that, ill health assessment. And what that is that as long as you're eligible for PIP, you can automatically get the extra element of universal credit now. So you won't have to do that whole assessment thing. What makes it tricky for PIP claimants now is that you won't have universal credit anymore as a separate way of ensuring that in case PIP turn around and say you're not eligible for this award, you have no backup now with universal credit. And I think that's where our concerns are at the moment, that if someone applies for PIP and they turn around and they're not awarded for those components and they're challenging it, in most cases, the backup and the protection for those clients has always been going to universal credit, doing the work capability assessment, submitting those doctors and fit notes, and potentially getting those extra financial help with the extra elements. But the government are now saying that it's likely that if only you are on PIP, they said at any rates, which is fair enough. I mean, at least they didn't say like, you know, the highest rate components. But even so, they're saying unless you are claiming PIP, you just can't get the extra elements of universal credit. I mean, we're not happy about that. We are still waiting for more information about how that's going to work. If there's, you know, some transitional sort of protection for those that were already claiming the certain elements of universal credit, will that maybe assist them with their PIP claim, maybe? So I think there's loads of questions definitely still being asked around it. But I think right now the danger is if you claim it from universal credit now and you still haven't yet claimed PIP, there's going to be a bit of a back and forth. I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that you at the DLS, once everyone's got a bit more of an idea of the legal framework behind it, you'll have some really good resources on how the spring budget's going to affect things. So I'll make sure to try and share that around with our community once you've got those.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's have a look at some questions. Okay, so someone has asked, if you're no longer able to work due to your condition, but have some savings, is PIP the only benefit available to you?
So two things. It depends on how much savings you have, because you could still apply for universal credit. And you can still, at this current stage, still be eligible to do the work capability assessment, which allows you to be put potentially into a support group, which will stop you from the pressure of having to look for work, and that extra financial assistance. So yeah, two things. It depends on your savings, and no, technically PIP isn't the only benefit you could apply for. You could apply for universal credit or ESA, and again, but it depends on your savings.
Yeah, thank you. Someone else has asked, how long does New Style ESA last for?
So New Start ESA lasts for as long as universal credit, in essence. As long as nothing has changed within your circumstances, it should continue for as long as it needs to. But if something changes within your health, or you have savings accumulated, or, you know, just even just moving, to be honest, into certain accommodations, for example, if you've gone to like supported living or just something completely different, those things can trigger a sort of review, should I say, over that benefit. But as far as you're in the same sort of situation, that shouldn't stop unless something has triggered it.
Okay, thank you. Someone else has asked, I have Scleroderma and Raynaud's and receive DLA, middle rate mobility. However, my health circumstances have changed and I believe I need this to be changed. What should I do?
So she received the high, so they received the middle rates mobility. Yeah, so if your situation has changed and you definitely feel like your condition has deteriorated, okay, so I'm very, very careful when I advise for you to go in and do a change of circumstances form, because it will automatically have them to review your whole claim. And, you know, once upon a time, that was very fair, especially when it comes to reviewing individual claims. But the truth of the matter is they can turn around and say that, yes, you might be entitled to the high rate component, which is always, you know, the great answer we're looking for. But in fact, they can turn around and the DWP can say, well, actually, we've looked at everything again. We're going to either stop, reduce, or increase. So they could even decide to stop just based on you asking for them to review your mobility component and to increase it. So honestly, it is up to you. And I think the most important thing is, do you have enough medical evidence so that it is as simple and as easy and transparent as it can be, in order for the DWP not to turn around and sort of have this going back and forward? So I think it's up to you is the answer. And always make sure that you have enough medical evidence or anyone that's working with you. And I always say you can get statements from friends and families as well. A lot of people don't know that. And they actually really do help claims, believe it or not. So I will always urge for you to go and request what you are entitled to. But I always have to be honest and say that it could cause problems in terms of moving your components or even stopping your claim. So it's definitely worth bearing in mind. Okay.
Definitely. And that kind of leads me on to something I wanted to talk to you about, which was that because Scleroderma Raynaud's is so complex and it can differ so drastically in person to person, and also the fact that it's a rare, misunderstood condition, it seems to be when we help people through the charity go through their PIP claims or DLA claims, there doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason to who gets accepted and who gets denied. And I was wondering if you had any advice that could be aimed at, specifically rare conditions, of how you can fill out the form to demonstrate just how you can be affected by them.
Yeah, of course. It is tricky. It is. It's because, believe it or not, I generally don't think, and I think a lot of advisors are with me on this, the DWP just don't have a stagnant policy in how, they say they have a guidance on how they assess, but really they don't, do they? Because like you said as well, there are different stages of this condition. Some are very sort of visible, noticeable, some aren't, but can still be very, very impactful on an individual's life. And it seems like the way it's sort of rated in PIP is so inconsistent. You can tell that it's done by anyone and everyone, and there isn't a specific guidance that they're following, because everyone gets different answers. I think the best advice is that if you're applying, because one thing that you also need to remember as well, which is always a positive with things like PIP and DLA, is they don't care, or they shouldn't care, and they don't take in what your condition or your diagnosis is. The reason behind PIP and DLA is that you are showing how much support and struggle you have on day to day. So you're always explaining what is different, what is so different for you of someone of the same age, size, ethnicity of your peer. Do you understand what I mean? Because that's where you have to sort of spoon feed, in essence, your condition to the DWP. So, for example, I'll give you a brief example. When it comes to daily living, and they talk about things like cooking or standing, I don't know much about the condition, but I know enough to know that it's similar to other skin conditions. So I used to suffer when I was little from something called eczema, and that could mean cracked, tight skin. Now, for me, if I was talking about somebody with eczema in that area of the component, they might not be able to stretch their arm out to press the button on a microwave or to cut, because if you think about the creases or the cut or the dry skin or the pulling, that is an inconvenience. That is painful. And skin alone is also a mental health thing. You have a lot of insecurity issues, self-esteem. And I think the best way to get any skin conditions out there on a PIP claim is to also talk about the mental effects it has on you and what the mental effects stop you or limit you from doing, because mental health has now been taken into consideration in things like PIP, I think since 2018. Don't quote me, I might have said that wrong, but nonetheless, they have added it now officially to their policy, and they can't dismiss mental health anymore like they used to. So I think the safest bet is always to link the condition to mental health, because there is a very, very, I believe so anyway, a very close connection between the both. And I think it's not just one or the other, is it? It's two of it. So I think that's the best way to sort of push it through.
Definitely. Some of the best advice I've seen has come from the Citizens Advice Bureau. They've got an amazing page. For anyone that doesn't know, they've got an amazing page on how to fill out a PIP claim. and they talk about writing about each component of the daily living and mobility questions and how to talk about them holistically and how it affects your whole week. And that's where sometimes when you have a complex condition, you know, sometimes some days it can affect your mobility, some days it can affect your mental health, some days you're really fatigued, some days you're not. You talk about it in terms of a week. So I really recommend having a look at the Citizens Advice Bureau. And also just to say now as well, we at SRUK can help write letters of support, or we can write letters of support to go alongside your applications. So if anyone needs anything like that or any support in that way, then do contact us through our website or info@sruk.co.uk. Let's get some more questions. Someone says, I work part-time from home doing admin work. I get PIP. I also claim working tax credit. Could I still claim the carer's allowance?
You claim PIP, you're working part-time. But I didn't hear if you're caring for someone.
I assume so.
Okay.
If they're thinking about claiming carer's allowance, but
yeah, if you are caring for someone and you believe you are caring for them for over 35 hours a week, as long as you're making less than £130 a week, roughly, then you should be able to claim carer's allowance. If you are earning more than that, then you won't be able to get carer's allowance. There is something called carer's credit, and that's if you care for, I think, 15 to 20 hours a week or something like that. Have a look on .gov.uk, because for those that don't get carer's allowance, I believe they can get carer's credit, and that, I think that is some financial help to a degree. So have a look on .gov.uk for that. I do think they might scrap it, but for now, if you can try and get a head start, grab it.
Great, thank you. If there is no change in your circumstances or your condition worsens, is there a part in law that says your existing entitlement isn't reduced? So I think this relates to the question that you answered before about how if you file a change of circumstances and then, you know, they suddenly decide to withdraw your whole benefits.
Is there a law that protects?
Yeah.
No, not yet. No, but we're trying to work for that. No, unfortunately, but that's where the appeal stages come in. You challenge it with everything you've got. And if you can get, you know, legal help and legal representation, if possible, then, you know, that will hopefully be your sort of saving grace. But no, unfortunately, there isn't sort of law or a case law yet that can protect those that don't have a change of circumstance, for example, and believe that they are entitled to, you know, a specific component. And if their claim stops, it stops at this point, unless you challenge it, of course, and the tribunal turns around and says, actually, you know what, you are entitled to it, we're going to reinstate. And at that point, they will backdate when they did stop it. Yeah.
That's good to know. Someone else asks or says that they receive PIP and Universal Credit Disability. They own their flats, and should their council be allowing them a reduction on council tax? So I suppose if you're receiving benefits, do you receive a reduction on council tax?
No, so receiving benefits doesn't automatically mean council tax reduction, unfortunately. The things that will be considered in council tax reduction would be if you have someone in the property that you are caring for, they become sort of not part of the, you know, tenancy. Also, if you live alone, you get the 25% single persons discount. If someone in the property you're living with or yourself has been signed off with severe mental illness, so any sort of mental conditions, then again, you might be eligible for council tax reduction. But just claiming benefits won't automatically grant you council tax reduction, unfortunately.
Okay. What do we know about success rates of PIP applications? Also at MR and appeal stages. And then which other agencies can help with form completion?
Oh gosh, you have put me on the hot seat. Wow. What do I think about PIP applications? They need a lot of work. But seriously, the numbers are just not consistent at the moment with how successful PIP is. I'm going to be so honest. Even as an advisor, I've been doing this for nearly over 10 years now. I still just don't know when a client is going to get awarded or not. It really is so surprising sometimes when I'm like, yeah, that's it. No way can they sort of turn around and say, you can't, you know, you're not getting the points in sort of daily living descriptor or the mobility descriptor. And in fact, they have turned around and said, oh, actually, I think that everything will change and that the success rate of PIP will increase once they get a policy in place that allows those that assess the benefits are medically practiced. Because the truth is, I think the problem is, at the moment, a lot of people that are assessing this claim in DWP actually have no medical backgrounds, no medical history, no medical profession, nothing. And I think that's where the problem is. And I think until that changes, we're never going to really know. We're never going to really know how successful PIP claims are, and you know what it is directly in order to really claim PIP. It really is a hit and miss application at the moment. In terms of receiving support, citizens advice bureaus will offer form filling. If they have the capacity, some will also offer casework. There's a website, sort of a directory that we use called www.advicelocal.uk. And they're a really good site in terms of just popping your postcode in, and hopefully it will give you sort of your local law centres and advice centres around you. Disability Law Service, I mean, we don't do form filling, but we do give advice. When it comes to representation, legal aid in welfare rights have been strict. We are trying to get it back, and we are going to work at DLS in trying to offer that hopefully down the line again. But for now, the only organisation that I know that still offer it is called Osborne's Law. They take on cases based on merits, and they offer legal aid for welfare rights, and they're really, really good if they have capacity. Osborne's Law. So we'll send that around as well, just in case anyone don't catch it. So don't worry about that. But yeah, so those are sort of the avenues in terms of getting support or representation. And you know, the truth of the matter is, PIP at the moment, we just don't have an actual sort of figure with success rates, and we honestly don't even have a figure for success rates anymore with MR or first tier. At one stage, we would always say that, oh, you might get a turnaround at the MR stage. It's looking like now everyone just sort of still gets an automatic no at the MR stage, and in fact, nothing's actually been looked at. And it's seeming that the first tier tribunal is where the decisions are changing. But I don't want anyone to hold me to that, because again, it does depend on individual cases. And it hasn't been consistent enough for us to say that's where the success is higher. Okay.
Yeah, and it's hard to get any data out of the Department of Work and Pensions, even with many freedom of information requests. Someone else is asking if you could maybe talk through the point scheme that's applied to PIP.
Okay, so what do you mean the points scheme?
I think they mean...
Oh, okay, so the descriptors.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need to be generally awarded 12 points for each, or for one, in order to be able to get one of the components or both. And you can get as low as, I think, 1 or 2 points for each descriptor. It's tough when it comes to mobility. Mobility is your toughest area of component. It is easier to claim daily living, I'll be honest with you, especially when it comes to even describing it or explaining it. It's just an easier component. With mobility, I always try to get clients to explain not the difficulties you have by moving, but the mental well-being. So that will fall under something called sort of non-visible walking. You know, it basically says that, yes, I can walk. I know I can move my legs, but I'm now explaining what the problems are behind that, what that does to me. And the fact that I can't walk as quick as maybe somebody of my age and my stature, or, you know, not being able to walk daily. For example, in some cases, they've allowed some to put on weight, which will affect their mobility. I think sometimes we don't realize that breaking down those things about weight, things about, you know, not moving as much because you've been homebound because of insecurity, those things can be discussed and explained in the mobility components. But you want to aim for anywhere between 2 to 4 points for both. Because by the time they add up, you'll notice that it gets to that sort of 12 points, and then you know that you're at least being awarded something of PIP. I will always try and say don't challenge it straight away if you've been awarded PIP, because you don't want to finally you've been awarded PIP and then them turn around and think, oh, well, you know, I mean, they shouldn't, but they do. Stop it. Wait a while, have a feel of it. And then when you know you've got more evidence to support that you should have been awarded more, then go for it. Okay. But I wouldn't say do it straight away. Even if you've been awarded PIP and you believe you should have been awarded higher, I think wait.
Just quickly, how long do you think you'll need for the rest of the presentation? So I know how many more questions I can ask you.
Not long. I think it's just like one slide, because I'm going to be talking about cost of living, just sort of.
Okay. So I'll give it 5 minutes at the end.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've got 5 minutes left to ask.
That's fine.
These questions. We've got a lot of questions, so I'll send to everyone who doesn't get their questions answered today. I'm going to send your questions to Dami, and then everyone will get emailed out her answers. So hopefully, when you get the recording of the webinar, hopefully everyone will be satisfied that their questions have been answered. So a question: will pensions be included in the £130 weekly income for carers?
Will pensions be included?
So yeah, so when you were saying carers allowance, if you earn more than £130, you're not eligible.
Yeah.
Pensions
are taken. Yeah, because pensions are taken as income or savings. So yeah, it will be considered.
Okay, good to know. Oh, someone said for the person who asked about council tax reductions, you can get a reduction if your house has been adapted in some way for your disability needs. Good to know.
That's true.
Another question, do you have any advice for someone filling out a DLA form for their child?
Yeah, anyone that works with that child, the school, the teachers, get as much supporting evidence as you can from them. They are the saving grace behind DLA claims. Of course, the medical history is always important. But I think at the end of the day, you as the parent will always know your child. So you will always know what needs to be on that form. But I think as well, if they are in an establishment, they are spending loads of time with the kid. Their statement holds a lot of weight. And I feel like that will be very, very important for them. I have a son, he's high functioning autistic. He claims a DLA, and his support system and the people that support him were the biggest sort of driving force behind his claim specifically. And it had nothing to do with my expertise, because believe it or not, when I have my own problems, I forget that I'm an advisor, and I'm completely as vulnerable as everybody else. So it really is the support there. And don't think that any information is irrelevant. No matter how small the information is, I will always urge for you to put it there. If that means that there's a bad mood, or there's something that triggers the child to be unhappy, or you've noticed certain things in his sleeping pattern, or, you know, just behavioral changes outside of the medical diagnosis, really break down the struggles you see your child going through. And I think as honest as you can be, honesty is probably the only thing that matters with the DLA claim.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard a couple of stories about people applying for DLA for their children, and assessors have questioned the fact that maybe they're not on medication. So these specifically, I'm thinking of cases that have been children with severe Raynaud's. So a lot of adults with severe Raynaud's take medication because it's a good way of managing things, but this medication can have some side effects. So they try and really avoid giving it out in children. And my advice, my very non-legal, non-professional advice, was that, you know, say that. Exactly. They're giving it out to children. And this is a universal thing. This is quite consistent across the NHS. They really try and avoid giving any unnecessary medication to children that they can. So it's things like that. It's the honesty part, and also stressing that, you know, that's good practice, that's consistent. Because sometimes it seems like the adult criteria onto children, which seems wrong. Yeah, exactly. I would also exactly agree with the fact that you just need to say that they can't get medications. They, you know, it's avoided. They rather not drug children. That's across any diagnosis, really, to be honest with you. And that actually brings up a very interesting point, because when my son was going through the assessment at the time, they tried to be funny as well and said, you know, oh, but, you know, autism doesn't you know, necessarily mean that he has an aid. He needs an aid. And you know, they try to link that with, because he has coordination issues, so that affects his mobility, and because he doesn't use an aid, they think he doesn't have coordination issues. Now, autistic people are very specific in what they do or what they touch or how things feel, and if aids won't work for them, then they will rather struggle. That's just the, you know, the truth of it. So I think they can always turn around and be cheeky, but I think you know, like you said, you just have to be sort of forceful in fact and say, well, you know, if there was medication allowed and it was safe, my child would be using it. But in fact, they're not. And this is what's making it harder to manage, why it's making it harder to manage, because it's, you know, preventing this or, you know, so and so. So exactly, I would just be truthful about it. That's all you can really do. And, you know, the doctors can reiterate that in a supporting letter, that in fact, we just can't, you know, offer any medication, but these are the struggles that may come up. Definitely. Well, thank you for answering those questions, and all the other questions we'll try and get answered and sent out to you. I'm gonna share the screen again, hopefully it works, and we can do the last bit of the presentation. There we go, is that working?
Yeah, I think I'm just waiting for it to come up there. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to cover briefly the cost of living payment updates that are coming out this year. The government didn't really break it down in the budget discussion, but they did touch on it briefly before, and they did hint at it again. So I'm going to talk about it briefly because I think it's important for those that are already claiming these benefits, because help is needed. And I feel like, you know, if payments are coming, you should be aware, and then that way you can prepare. Okay. So as you remember, last year, because of the COVID, we had something called the cost of living payments. And that was, I think, about £600 split into two payments. So that was 320 and 320 in two different payments. And then there was an additional £150 for disabilities. And then you had those for extras, for pension and things like that. So for this financial year, for 2023 and 2024, they've upped it to £900 as a full sum. And that will be paid using the same criteria. So the relevant benefits that you should be claiming already will allow you to be able to assess the amount. So if you're claiming universal credit, income-based job seekers allowance, income-related employment and support allowance, income support, working tax credit, child tax credit, and pension credit. Okay. So the £900 has been said that it will be split into 3 payments because it's much more than what was given to us last year. And the first payment will be £301. The second will be £300, and the third will be £299. I didn't touch on the others, but I will just say it briefly now. £150 will be paid twice this year. Last year, there was only one payment for disabilities. They have agreed that they will put another one out this year. So when I say two payments, I don't mean two separate payments this year. I just mean they will pay another £150 in the next financial year. So on top of this, if you get a disability benefit, you will also get an additional £150. If you claim pension, you also get an additional money as well. On top of that, the dates haven't officially been out yet. We are hoping that in the next few days that we will get a date breakdown of when people should start getting that first payment. They did say spring, so it should be really in the next couple of weeks maximum. But I would say keep an eye out for that. And the most important thing that I realized last year was that a lot of people were in fact entitled to cost of living payments and didn't receive it. Please don't think that just because you haven't received it, there's nothing you can do. We can challenge it. We can ask for them to relook at the system, for them to relook at the error, and they will pay it out. So just don't assume that the government or the DWP are going to get it right. If you truly believe that you are entitled to cost of living payments because you receive the necessary benefits, contact somebody, contact an advisor, contact a law centre, find out. And if you are in fact entitled to it and you have not received the payment, it's better to get in touch within the first few months. So I would say 2 months maximum, just because after that, it'll be harder for us to challenge you getting that money. In fact, actually, it's probably impossible because we pushed our luck last year with a few, and I just don't think they're going to give us that saving grace again. So I will say, don't leave it for too long if you've realised that you haven't received the cost of living payment, okay? And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Dami. That was so interesting. And I'm sure everyone else found it really useful too. Obviously, we'll be putting this out on YouTube. We might be making some shorter videos for some more concise information. And yeah, I just wanted to say, if any of you would like a letter of support from SRUK, then please do contact info@SRUK or give the office a call. We'll try our best to get you a letter from us that's specific to your experience and sent out in time for your application or appeal. And Dami, do you want to tell people where they can reach you maybe?
Yes, of course. And before I do that, I really wanted to touch on as well, if, you know, when you do find yourself in a scenario where you've applied for things like PIP or DLA and they've turned around and they might not give any reasons, or they might have, try and share some of those reasons with SRUK if you can, or even with us actually at the Disability Law Service, because I feel like that information will get us a step closer to potentially getting some form of guidance with how things need to be managed with conditions like this. So please share it. Please share that, you know, is this normal? Because this is what I was told. This is how I was treated. I don't think that, you know, don't feel like the way you've been treated is standard. It isn't, especially if you feel uncomfortable, you felt, you know, not respected. That needs to be shared. And I feel like that would be very, very important in sort of helping us establish certain policies moving forward when, you know, you're claiming things like PIP. So yeah, please do share. In terms of legal advice, you can always come to us at the Disability Law Service. We have an email address for the welfare rights team, and that's benefits with an S at the end at D for Delta, L for Lima, S for sugar.org.uk. So that's benefits at dls.org.uk. And we also have more information on our website at the Disability Law Service website, where we have contact numbers for various other teams. We do advice on housing, community care, employment, discrimination. Also, if you do know someone with multiple sclerosis as well, MS, we actually give specific advice for MS. Well, there's a team that gives advice specifically for MS patients. But even if you just have a question, really, and it's not even just for legal advice, or you have a concern, or you just wanted to double check something before filling out a form, please do contact us. We do, and we will answer it if we're able to. But just bear with us because we are super busy. So it might always take us a few days to get back to you. It is only me at DLS that works for the welfare rights team. So everything does go through me and out of me. So please do bear with me, but I will always get there. I'll always answer your questions. But yeah, please do share your concerns. I think we are trying to push for some serious change when it comes to these very rare conditions. And the only way we can get there is those with those rare conditions, let us know the battles that you are facing, because we won't know unless, you know, we're in your shoes. And the only way we can be able to advocate for you is if we really understand how you're managing it, and, you know, how difficult these applications are for you and how accessible they're not or are, and things like that. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for your questions. Oh yeah, and I will answer all the ones that didn't come live through to me today. I will just do sort of like, I will also touch on some that have been asked already on the document, I think, just so you've got that to hand as well to always go back to.
Thank you so much, Dami, and thank you for everyone for attending and for your amazing questions. Yeah, you'll hear from us soon when we email all this information out. But for now, have a lovely day. And yeah, I hope it helps.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.